Hey guys, what's going on? I'm coming back here really quick after my last video because I want to do an entry for a contest that good guys having on here. Somebody I really enjoy watching his videos, and I wanted to support his channel and his contest. So this is a contest entry for Soulgotha. He's doing a $50 gift card raffle, and it's a cool thing. My big thing is I just kind of wanted to enter and make a video because the idea behind his video is really awesome, and it's about sharing a nostalgic memory that you have, something that puts a smile on your face. And it's kind of a cool thing. It's very similar to the contest I'm currently running where I was talking about your movie memories. This is just a general nostalgic memory, and got me kind of excited because there was something that came right to mind immediately after hearing the contest. The first thing I want to say is that he mentioned that this $50 came from R.J. O'Hagan. I want to say big props to R.J. O'Hagan. That same contest entry that Soulgotha did to win that. I got second place in that, and it was a great contest, and I really appreciated what Richie did for us here, having this big contest and giving out prizes, and it's very cool of Soulgotha to take that extra $50 and put it back into the community. So I really don't even care if I win or lose because to me, it's a cool thing to be a part of this community and be sharing these kind of things between cool YouTubers. Okay, now we'll skip to my actual entry. Sorry about all this. My entry is actually when I was a kid. One of the things that I think about quite often, just randomly, different things make the same memory come back. And this took place, I would have to guess, around my 5th grade year. Is pretty close to that time. It would have been like between 4th and 6th grade in there. There was a lot of guys that I was kind of hanging out with that were much older, and they were in high school. And in my small town, we kind of all just walked between different places. And this one kid, where my grandparents worked and where his family worked were side by side. So after school, we were all just kind of hanging out around there. And we would just get bored and kind of just go off and do things, to pass the time between when we got out of school and when it was the end of the day when, our businesses all in this small town closed. And the cool thing was that we got into lots of things that I still think about a lot today, like Dungeons and Dragons and, just cool things like that. I mean, this was way back there. This was in the late 80s. But the thing that I always really enjoyed is about 2 blocks away, we walked to this gas station, and there was very, very specific things we did there. We went to this gas station. They had microwave burritos, which I love the idea of that. And then you could get like fountain drinks, or they had these like icy slush puppy type things. And I always really enjoyed, just thinking of those things because that reminds me so much of that little gas station. And it's such an 80s experience going in there. And on one side of the wall, there was all the fountain drinks and the slushy machines and everything. And a microwave was sitting there, and you could get a burrito and heat it up yourself. They just, expected you to do that on your own. And then on the opposite wall, there was a row of video games. And I guess so many kids played that during lunch because when I was a kid, the high school kids could get out for lunch and go to town and would go in there quite often. So what they done is they put a couple of tables with some chairs along that wall with the video games, and kids would go in there and get something to eat, but they would play video games during lunch. I know this sounds so 80s, and to me it is very 80s. Like to this day, it just reminds me every time I see movies where people are in like gas stations playing video games and eating food. It's just exactly like that. But the thing that kills me is to this day I can go get a gas station burrito, which I do quite often, like maybe once every month or two I'll go and get one. They still taste exactly the same as the way I remember them 25 years ago. And then the video games we played, those things, anytime I play something similar to that, that same memory comes back. The games that we played quite often that I really loved was the original Punch-Out, which is kind of similar to Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. Some of the same characters are in that, but it's slightly different. the guy that you play as, he's kind of like a green shape of what he would be. You can kind of see through him, and it's more of like your character's larger. It's hard to describe, but if you've ever seen the original just Nintendo Punch-Out, you would probably know what I'm talking about. But there's people like Glass Joe and Bald Bull, and a lot of the characters that have been in Punch-Out for a long time were in that original arcade game. The only thing that's weird is it had this gigantic like KO button that you had to like smash down, and I always remember playing that a lot. It was really cool. And I can remember the weird sound effects from the guys saying, knock him out, and all that stuff. You could hear those people saying, and it was recorded in such a like a digitized kind of way that you could hear it clearly, but yet it didn't really sound exactly like a person talking. That game reminds me a lot of that. The next one is Joust. There was a Joust machine there, and if you're familiar with the arcade game Joust, so fun. You're like this little jousting knight looking guy, but you're on the back of like an ostrich, and there's these platforms, and there's these lava pits, and there's these other guys that are sort of like you, but they're kind of different, and there's these flying dragons and these different things, and when you hit the top of these guys, in essence kind of kills them. They turn into an egg, and you go capture the egg, and it's very difficult to describe, but if you're familiar with it, you know exactly what I mean. If you're not, for some reason, you can definitely YouTube, Google search something like that, and you'll get definitely a picture of what I'm talking about. And it's got a very unique sound of like running, and like when you try to stop, and it, like their feet skid. I don't know, but it was a really funny game, and it was one of those definite button smasher type games. It doesn't sound like it would be because it wasn't like a shooting game. But the button smashing part was you had to actually hit a button to fly. And the guys that were really good at that could hit the button so fast that they could just fly all over the screen. And you would get going so fast you couldn't even hardly stop. But I remember seeing people that would come in there that would kind of play for money. And they were the ones that were always sitting on the high score. And it was kind of a big deal if the electricity went out because it would reset the high scores a lot of times. And they would have to come back in and reclaim that top position. And they weren't really my friends, but I remember seeing some of those people in there. And there was one guy that we hung out with, and his name was Randy. And he always talked about how good he was at Joust. And we thought he was kidding, and he went in there and put up some crazy high score and went to like a really high level. And I remember watching, a guy get to a really high score on a tough arcade game on 1/4, and that's still something that sticks with me to this day. And then the next game that we played, because these were the three main games, there's only one other game I remember playing, an arcade game, and that was Dragon's Lair. And that game, if you're familiar with it, is like a cartoon, and you have these options. It plays like a story. And then the last moment, you've got this option to make a decision, and you have to react quickly, and you have to react precisely with the right decision, or your guy just dies. And I remember that was a fun game because we, as a group, kind of memorized the path through different rooms, and it was always really cool when you got to something that nobody had seen before, or you got to a room that you'd never passed, and when you finally got to see the animation of clearing that room, it was really, really cool. That game, to this day, I don't know if it's really that fun. It's kind of quirky to play that game on like DVD or something, but as an arcade game, it was so amazing to see something that advanced, because it really did feel super advanced, and I can still hear the music, that like the jingle, they go ding, then go Dragon's Lair, and all this stuff. That sounds corny for me to say it that way, but you would just have to know what it was like because it was so clear, and the music was so loud, and it was instrumental. It didn't really sound like a digital type sound that a lot of video games had. It really sounded like real music because they had voice actors and they had sound effects and things like that because it was put on a laser disc. If you weren't really familiar with that, they based this game on a laser disc similar to like the movie Laserdisc, but it was the computer controlled ones that sent signals to it, and it would jump around to different points, and that's how it would lay out. This cartoon would play for so many seconds. Depending on if you answered it correctly, it would skip to this one or skip to that one. And it was kind of like using your remote to play those DVD style games. Now, if you went in the right motion, it just kind of, told the story. And it's really cool to think that, back a long time ago, I spent lots and lots of money playing Dragon's Lair, and now you can go buy that game for like $20 and play it as much as you want on your TV at home, which kind of blows my mind. But yeah, so that's my memory. That's my entry. Eating burritos and drinking slushies and Slurpee type drinks and eating candy and stuff and hanging out at a gas station to play video games, because when I was a kid there was an arcade in my town, but there were several places you could play arcade games, including like restaurants, that gas station, there was a pizza place, there was a laundry mat. And I always think about that. I get really nostalgic for arcades because I think it's kind of a cool, fun thing that most kids, younger kids haven't really experienced. And it was kind of the thing to do back in the day when I was a kid. So that's my entry. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you get a chance, definitely check out Soulgotha and R.J. O'Hagan, the guy that kind of originally started all this and, was so generous with Soulgotha and I when we won his contest. I will put both those links down below. That's it. Thanks, everyone. And, yeah, bye.